Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. This is our third and final video going over the mid-year exam answers. As we scroll down, you can see we've done the first video on algebra skills. Last video looked at algebra solving. And the final section of R1, we're going to be going over algebra graphs. So part 3 algebra graphs, question 1. So the Auckland housing market is booming at the moment. So it's all about houses. Townhouses are very popular among developers and first home buyers. This is actually really true. You'll see them popping up all over the show. Townhouses are built attached to a neighboring house, and you can see that in the pattern here. So there's a regular house, there's 2 townhouses, and there's 3 townhouses. For an achieved mark, you are asked to draw the 4th pattern in the townhouse. And this one here was a fairly straightforward one. There's the first one, there's the second one, there's the third one, and there's the 4th one. If you're able to do that, your drawing didn't have to be perfect by any means. You were given that full achieved mark. So we're now moving on to the table part. Complete the table which relates to the number of houses and the number of walls. So going up here, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All of those walls, they pull together to form that first house. So we'll pop 6 here. Then we do the same for pattern 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So that forms there. Noticing a difference of 5 straight away, but we can't rely on one difference. We need a second one just to confirm that that's accurate. So let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And I'm liking that 16 because that does confirm that pattern of 5. If we extrapolate that pattern, that would have been 21. That there would have been 26. If you're able to fill out that table, you were given an achieved mark. Any errors meant you were done and dusted, no chance of doing that. So question C is all about finding a rule. That's another word for an equation. So we've gone through a few of these before. That gives the number of walls in terms of the number of houses. So what this means, it must be W equals something to do with N. So W is going to be equal to N. We need the gradient and we need the start point here. So the gradient relates to how much it's changing by every time. So our gradient is going to be 5. And if we follow our pattern backwards, to say 0, that there would be 1. And it's that value there, 1, which is going to be added on the end plus 1. If you're able to get that, you got your achieved mark. If a development includes 41 walls, how many houses would it comprise of? This is a bit of algebra. So we're going to write down our initial equation. We're going to substitute out the W and put in the 41. That means 41 will be equal to 5n plus 1. We're now just going to solve for n by doing -1, -1. So 40 equals 5n. And we're then going to go divide by 5, divide by 5. 8 equals n. So that means that development would have comprised of 8 houses. If you got me n equals 8, you got your achieved mark. Hopefully you've started adding in the context because it's 8 houses, not just n equals 8 as well. So that was the first question. 4 achieved marks off the bat like that. That's actually enough to pass the section overall. For each sequence, identify the 2 missing numbers. So I'm going to be exploring the difference. So the difference between here and here is 5. Difference between 12 and 13 or 17 is 5. Difference between 17 and 22, also 5. Well, we've written 15, but that's definitely 5. If we carry on that pattern, that should be 27. That there should be 32. Now we need to do the same for the next one. And unfortunately, we don't really have any differences we can see. Apart from this one over here, we can only see that's 4. If we carried that on, that would make that 7. And then that would make that 3. So that looks like it verifies our pattern. And we carry on the 4 here, that would get us to 19. And the last one, this one here, isn't really adding or subtracting. This one here is going times 3. times 3. If we times 3 again, it gets us to 27. Times 3 again gets us to 81. Times 3 again, 243. If you got those right, you would have got achieved. I do think if you got 2 out of the 3, your teacher probably would have given you an achieved mark anyway, because that did show you could identify and extrapolate a pattern. So question 3 about translating a coordinate. So point 1, negative 2, that's this point down the bottom here. That's on the axis. It's been moved left 1, up 4, right 2. In the box, draw the point or the new location and down right, and then write down the coordinate. So well, let's go ahead. Let's move it across 1. So that's to the left 1. Let's move it up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we moved it up 4. And then let's go right to 1, 2. So that there is the new location. If you drew that on, you did need to do that. Once you drew it on, you did need to write down the coordinate. And if we go across and down, it looks like it's 2 and 2. So x would be 2, y is 2. So our coordinate 2, 2. If you did both of those, you got an achieved mark for that part. And we're now moving on to the harder stuff. So this is the first merit type question available to us in this section. And we've been asked to determine the equation. And don't forget, an equation is something where there's an equal sign and there's something on both sides of that equal sign for the following linear relationships. So let's start off with A. So A is a horizontal line, and it goes through the y-axis at 3, which means y is equal to 3. We'll then move on to C, because C is pretty similar to A. So there's C down the bottom. It goes through the x-axis at negative 2. So that means x is equal to negative 2. And we can tell that because they're horizontal and vertical lines, so they're always going to be x equals y equals type lines. The other ones, you can see the green line, that's slanted upwards. The purple line, that's slanted downwards. We're going to need that y equals mx plus c formula to determine the relationship or the equation for those ones. So let's start off with the green one. So the c, that relates to the start point, which in our case is 0. So c will be equal to 0, and it goes up 1 and across 3. So that means our gradient, rise over run, don't forget, rise over run. It rises 1, runs 3. So our gradient is going to be 1/3 for that equation. So therefore, we're going to be left with y equals 1/3 of x. Technically, we're doing plus 0, but we ignore that plus 0 because it has no mathematical effect on that. So well done if you got that question. That one was a bit tricky. A lot of us did write 3x, getting the rise and the run the wrong way around. But 1/3, definitely the right answer. We're now going to look at that purple line. So same thing, I normally start off with writing down my formula. Well, what's the c value? And we can see our y-intercept is up the top, so c is going to be equal to 4. We then have a look at our gradient. That's always a rise over run. So let's have a look at runs 1, and it rises negative 2. So negative 2 over 1 is going to get us to negative 2. So our equation, y equals negative 2x plus 4. If you got 2 out of these 4, you were given achieved. If you got 3 out of 4, you're also given achieved. But if you got all 4 out of 4, that's how you're going to get your merit mark for this particular question. So it was a bit of a tricky question. There was a lot to it, but they were relatively simple, but they do lead on to the next parts here. So for question 5, so for equation D, so that is the purple line, visually inspect the graph to determine both the x and y intercepts. Your answer should be in coordinate form. So let's have a look. X-intercept, we can see that down the bottom there. That's going through at 2. The y value is going to be 0, so that's going to be 2, 0. 2, 0. And the x-intercept, or sorry, the y-intercept, that was at 4, so that's going to be 0, 4. Just a reminder that there is the x, which is the opposite of y, which is always equal to 0. And the same with the first one, that's x. So the opposite, the y spot, is always going to have a value of 0. So well done. If you got both of those in coordinate form, that you did get your achieve mark. If it wasn't in coordinate form, I probably marked it wrong. Okay, so we're now moving on to the first E question. So 4 equations, B and D in question 4. So let's jot those down. That was y equals 1/3 of x, and then y is equal to negative 2x plus 4. Those are those 2 equations. Use algebra to determine the exact points of intersection. And for this one here, what we need to do is we're just going to substitute them, because at the point where they touch each other, which is going to be that point there, which I'm drawing on now, the y value is going to be the exact same for both of them. So we know this y and this y are the exact same. We can equate them. So we're going to go 1/3 of x must be equal to negative 2x plus 4. Once we've done that, we can go ahead and solve it. The solving here is going to be a bit annoying because of this fraction here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this negative 2 to a fraction with a denominator of 3 before I get into solving that. So 1/3 of x is equal to negative 6 over 3. Just noting that's negative 2x plus 4. I'm now going to group the x's together, so they need to be on the same side. So I'm going to move this to the other side, and I'm going to do that by going plus 6 over 3 of x. That means these cancel each other out, and then plus 6 over 3 of x. That leaves us with 7x, 6 plus 1, divided by 3. That there's going to be equal to positive 4. We then go ahead, finish off with our simple algebra, times 3 times 3. So 7x is equal to 12. And then we're going to go divide by 7, divide by 7. X is equal to 7. Oh gosh, sorry. Not 7, 12 over 7. So that's our first value of x. That's why this one was a bit trickier than it looked, because it was a bit messy with fractions. We now need to put this x value into either of these equations to find out what the y equivalent is going to be. I'm going to pick the first equation because it looks a bit simpler, and I'm more confident dealing with fractions anyway. So y is equal to 1/3 of x. We know that x is 12 over 7. So y is going to be 1 over 3 times 12 over 7. When you're multiplying fractions, don't forget top times top. 12, bottom times bottom, 21. They've both got a 3 in common. So we're going to take that 3 out. So let's go divide by 3, divide by 3. That becomes 4 over 7. We've now got our y coordinate. So if you found one of these two correct, you got achieved. If you made one mistake along the process, you got a merit. If you then put them in coordinate form, like I'm doing now, 12 over 7 and 4 over 7, that is how you got an excellence, because a point of intersection is referring to a coordinate, so you did need to take that final step to get that full excellence mark. So well done if you got that E question. It was pretty tricky in the end because of all the fractions that were popping up and down, but hopefully you've updated your answer if you did miss out on it. So we're now on to question 7. The equation of a parabola below can be formed using the vertex method. So that was one of our learning objectives. And that equation was y equals a x plus b squared plus c. For the parabola we've got here, identify if the a values, a, b, or c values will be positive or negative, and we've been told to circle the answer below. So let's start off with a. So a relates to how skinny or fat it is. It also relates to it if it's positive or negative. So if it is upwards, that's positive. If it is downwards, that is negative. In our case, it is certainly going upwards, so that means the a value was positive. The b value relates to how much it moves left or right. So ours has been moved to -1. And don't forget, when you're putting it in the bracket, it would have been x plus 1 squared because it's the opposite. So that means our value there, our b value, is going to be positive as well. And the c value relates to how much it moves up or down. It's been moved down to -3, which means c is going to be -3, which means it is the negative answer. If you got 3 out of 3 here, you did get achieved. I don't think there was a lot of room to give you any marks if you only got 2 out of 3 though. So that was that achieved question. We're now on to question 8. For the graph below, use the factorize method. So we've been specifically told which method to use. So definitely don't go near the vertex method here to determine the equation of the given parabola. So first steps, I always focus on B and C's, and they relate to the x-intercepts. So B is going to be equal to -1, which is the opposite value, or the negative value of that. And then C is going to be +3, which is the opposite value of that negative intercept. We're now going to substitute that in. So Y is going to be equal to A, B minus 1, and then X, I'm not sure why I said B, X minus 1, and then X plus 3. We're now going to use the other reference point here. At that point, we're told that X is equal to 0 and Y is equal to -6. We're going to substitute that in. So -6 is going to be equal to A, and then 0 minus 1, and then 0 plus 3. This becomes 3 times -1, which is -3. So -6 is equal to -3A. I'm going to go divide by -3, divide by -3. So +2 is equal to A. If you found me that value, I think I gave you an achieved mark. Also might have got an achieved mark if you got the B and the C values correct. But to round up and get your merit, you did need to state the final equation, which is Y equals 2, X minus 1, X plus 3. If you did that, you got your merit. Don't forget, these brackets can be the other way around. Doesn't matter because they're being multiplied together. There you go. So there's our merit question. We're now nearing the end of our section. We've got these ones here and then some, a few more on the other page as well. So another parabola has the equation 1/3 of x plus 2 squared minus 3. Find the coordinates of the x and the y-intercepts and the vertex as well. So let's start off with the x-intercepts. So at the x-intercepts, I know that y is going to be equal to 0. So I'm going to put that in. So 0 is equal to 1/3 of x plus 2 squared minus 3. That minus 3 becomes +3 equals 1/3 of x plus 2 squared. That 1/3 is the same as divide by 3. Opposite of divide by 3 is times. So we're going to go 9 equals x plus 2 squared. We're then going to plus or minus that square root of 9 equals x plus 2. I'm going to carry on. That square root of 9 becomes plus or minus 3 equals, we'll get rid of that, equals x plus 2. We're then going to go minus 2 minus 2. So it's going to be -2 plus or minus 3 equals x. So our first answer for x is going to be -2 plus 3, which is +1. So our coordinate would be 1, 0 for that point. Our second answer would be -2 minus 3 equals -5. And that's going to be -5, 0. So x-intercepts done. They were certainly the hardest. So y-intercepts. What we know about the y-intercepts is we know that x will be equal to 0. So this one will be a bit easier to calculate. Y is equal to 1/3 of 0 plus 2 squared minus 3. 1/3 times 4. 4 is where that 2 squared comes from. That makes, I'm going to change that -3 to -9/3. Just to make the fractions work a bit easier. So that's going to be 4/3 minus 9/3, which is equal to 5/3, or -5/3. So our coordinate, 0, -5/3. If you got one of these 3 points correct, you were given achieved. If you got all of them correct, that's how you're awarded your merit mark up the top there. So we've done that. We're now shifting on to the vertex stuff. So we've got, to find the vertex, x1 plus x2 divided by 2 is how we find the middle of those. And we're looking for the middle because that parabola is symmetrical, so we know the vertex is going to be exactly in between those 2 points. So that there is going to be 1 plus -5/2 that there is negative 4 over 2, which is equal to negative 2. So we've done that. We're now going to substitute, find the y equivalent to that. So y is going to be 1/3 of negative 2 plus 2 squared minus 3. That negative 2 plus 2 is going to be 0. 0 squared, 0. And then 0 times 1/3, still 0, which means that y value is going to be that negative 3 at the end, because everything in front of it is 0 minus 3. And that means our coordinate, negative 2, comma, negative 3. If you got me this negative 2 value up top here, you got an A. If you were able to go all the way to the coordinate, that's how you got a merit mark over there. So that's question 9. Question 10, we're nearly done. We've got the nightmare excellence question on the way. Question 10, does the parabola x squared plus 3 have any x-intercepts? Explain your answer. You do not need to perform any calculations for this question. So the way I thought about this question is I drew a bit of a graph, and I knew that graph is going to be x plus 3, and it's going to sit up here. And there's 2 reasons it's not going to, touch the x-axis. And the first one is it's been lifted upwards, so that means the c is a positive number. And the other point is the a is positive, which means it's pointing upwards. A is positive. Don't forget, if it was pointing downwards, it would actually be negative, and it would have x-intercepts. So the idea that both the a and the c values are positive means there's going to be no x-intercepts here. So we just need to explain that in words. So our parabola has an a value, and I'm going to put that in quote marks, a value of 1, or I should be more specific, shouldn't I? Of 1, which is positive. Our parabola also has a c value of 3, which is positive. And then because a and c are both positive, the parabola will have no x-intercepts. So hopefully that makes sense. Hard to explain, but once you're chatting about the a and the c values, it does get a bit easier. So if you talked about one of the 2 values only, that's when we gave you achieved. If you chatted about both a and the c being positive, that's how you got a merit. And our final question, question 11. I've just changed rooms, so if the voice and the echo is a bit different, that explains that. And a lot of people were telling me after that we didn't go through questions like this, and I just want to note this is the type of question that's aimed at the E8 type of student, and we actually did go through this in quite a lot of detail. It's just really hard to see, and those with insight would be able to see what I'm talking about. So reading through the question, during a rugby training, Mr. Indabelli kicks the ball as high as he can. That's kind of what this looks like. That's him kicking the ball. That's him landing. Before the ball hits the ground, he realizes the kick it looks like a negative parabola. He estimates the following about the ball, or the movement of the ball. The ball landed exactly 50 meters away from where he kicked it. So if this here is the origin, 0, 0, this here is 50, 0. So that was earlier on talking about coming up with coordinates. So we learned that as well. After 10 meters of horizontal distance, so after maybe 10 meters here, we'll call that 10, the ball is 20 meters vertically above the ground. So that means that there is 20. So we've done that. So we've got another coordinate on the graph. Using the information, 1, form an equation representing the ball of the graph. So we know how to do that because we've got the x-intercepts, and we've done that in a lot of detail. And then it says, use it to find the maximum height of the ball, and that's just the vertex. So if you know how to do coordinates, if you know how to use the vertex method or the factorized method, and if you know how to calculate the vertex of a parabola, you know how to do this question. But it is just tricky to see, so a lot of us did struggle and thought we didn't go through questions like this, but all of those are skills we have learned in this learning objective, this topic. So let's look at the equation. So y is equal to ax plus b, x plus c. That's our generic equation. We know that b is going to be equal to 0 from the first one, and c is going to be equal to negative 50. So that means y is going to be equal to ax and then x minus 50. We now need to calculate a, and that's where the 20 and 10 stuff comes into play. So x is equal to 10 and y is equal to 20. So 20, just scrolling down to finish this. Oh gosh, I'm not sure why the 20 has moved down, but 20 equals 10x 10 minus 50. So that's going to be 20 equals 10x times negative 40. That means 20 is going to be equal to negative 400x, and then 20 divided by negative 400 is equal to x. So, oh gosh, I'm not sure why I've got x. So that should be a, referring to all of these, a. So a will be equal to negative 1 over 20. That means the equation of our parabola, y is equal to negative 1 over 20, x, and then we've got x minus 50 after that. So now that we've done that, we now need to find the middle of these, because that's where the vertex is going to be, and that math is going to be pretty easy. That's going to make it 25. So we know at that point there, x will be equal to 25. So we're going to go ahead and calculate and solve for that. So y is going to be equal to negative 1/20th times 25 times negative 25. When you put that in your calculator, you're going to get 31.25. So that there is our final answer. The maximum height, I'm just going to explain this in words to finish up my answer. The maximum height of the kick is 31.25 meters. So that wraps up our question. So just a big emphasis. I know a lot of us were very unhappy with this last question, and it was a really challenging one, but if you do look at it as something we all know how to factorize or use the factorized method. We all know how to find the vertex or the x value of a vertex, and we know how to find the y value of a vertex. So if you knew how to do all of those, and if you could insightfully see the parabola and these skills in the question, it was, I think, fairly straightforward in the end. But I do agree, certainly very challenging if you couldn't see what skills you've been asked to demonstrate. So thanks so much for watching, guys. That wraps up our video. So we've just finished off the second part. Do check out the video. The purple one was the one before, and then the blue text up the top, that was the very first part we looked at. So make sure you've looked at all three videos. Hopefully you've got a good understanding of what you've done right, what you've done wrong, what you can do better next time, and keep studying hard on your maths.